Okay, here the directions are state the following word problems as quadratic equations, solve, and check. Forget what they got written. Let's figure out how to do it our own way. Let's read what they say. The sum of two numbers is 15. So x plus y equals 15. And their product is 54. So x, y, product means multiply. So x times y equals 54. When you put two letters together, that means times. You don't have to put any symbols. All right, now we're going to use one equation to solve the other equation. So here, I'm going to say x, I'm going to move the y over here, and I'm going to subtract y from both sides. And what I get is x equals 15 minus y, and xy equals 54. So what I'm going to do is wherever I see x, I'm going to plug this in, okay? So I get y, I'm going to put this y in front, y times 15 minus y equals 54. Okay, so then we've got y times 15 equals 15y, y times y equals a negative y squared, and there's nothing to multiply the 54 by, so we write 54. From here, we're going to turn it into a quadratic equation. That means that we're going to move everything to one side of the equal sign. So what I'm going to get is a negative y squared, a positive 15y. I'm rearranging the terms so that they're in the order they're supposed to be in. You always write terms in order of the exponent. The larger exponent goes first. And then I'm going to subtract 54 from this side. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So that's how I get a negative 54 over here. Equals 0 because 54 minus 54 equals 0. I don't want a negative y, so I'm going to multiply everything by a negative so I could change the sign of that negative y squared. You never want a negative y exponent, okay? The square should never be negative. So you multiply by negative to turn it a positive. Negative times a negative equals a positive y squared. Negative times a positive equals a negative 15y. And a negative times a negative equals a positive 54. And there's no negative 0, so that stays as 0. Now we have it in the quadratic equation form. So they don't tell us how they want us to solve it. So I guess we can choose. You could either use the completing the square, the quadratic formula, or you can use factoring. I guess I'll use factoring to solve this equation. When you're going to factor, the first thing you should write is your parentheses. Write your parentheses. Now, I know that the factors of y squared, it only has two factors, y times y, because that's the only thing that when I multiply together will give me y squared. So the factor has to be y times y, right? So that's going to be my first term, y. Now look at the third term and figure out all the factors of 54. Okay, well, the first factor I could think of 54 equals 9 times 6. Now, how do I figure out if that's my right factor? Well, I know that 9 times 6 will give me 54, so I know it'll give me my third term, but will it give me my middle term when I add it? See, the way you figure out whether your factor for the second place in your parentheses is correct is when you multiply it, it should give you your third term, and when you add or subtract it, it should give you your middle term. And here, when I add and subtract 9 and 6, I get 15, so that's the correct answer. 9 and 6. So I'm going to put a 9 here and a 6 here. That's the correct factor. Now, what are my signs going to be? Well, since my last term is positive, I know that both of my signs are going to be negative because that's the only way I could get a positive term and a negative middle term. So I look at the sign of my third term. If it's positive, I know that my signs have to be the same. They either both have to be positive or they both have to be negative because that's the only way I could get a positive third term. If my middle term is negative, then I know that they're both going to be negative because that's how I can get a negative middle term. If my middle term is positive, then I know both of them would have to be positive. So now that I've factored, I grab this factor and make it equal to 0. And I grab this factor and make it equal to 0 and solve for both of them. So let me show you what I mean. Y minus 9 equals 0. And if I add 9 to both sides, what I get is y equals 9. Okay, and then I get y minus 6 equals 0. If I add 6 to both sides, what I get is y equals 6. And those are my two answers, y equals 9 and y equals 6.